Alright guys, this is mainly in case you missed the study session on Monday after school. But I'm going over chapter 3 right now. It's all about federalism and how the national government and the state government works together and divides power among the two. Now, first of all, there's a chart on page 70, table 3.1 rather, and it shows you the difference between unitary, confederate, and what we have is federal. Be familiar with it. There may be a question on that, but just mainly know what a unitary government is. Also know that there's only, I think, 12 countries now that have federal governments. Most governments are unitary, and that's on page 71. On page 72, table 3.2 talks about some powers that are denied to the states by the Constitution. Can states tax? Sure, they can. You pay sales tax all the time. Be familiar on page 73 with the Supremacy Clause, and it's Article 6 of the Constitution. On the middle of page 73, it's very important. We talked about in class about the Supremacy Clause, that the following three items are the supreme law of the land. 1, the Constitution. 2, laws of the national government as long as they fall in line with the Constitution. And 3, treaties. States can't go be making treaties with Russia. All right. The first really check on the states, the national government being the power over state governments was the Civil War, when Lincoln and the federal government sided with the North and abolition of slavery. Showed you the video of George Wallace standing at the schoolhouse door, denying admission to the University of Alabama by 2 African American students. You saw the video about how the Deputy Attorney General came in and said, hey, this is what it's going to be. This is a federal law granted by the Supreme Court ruling of Brown v. Board of Education in 1954. And Governor George Wallace, he did have to step aside, and those students were allowed to go to school. And that was, his argument was based on the 10th Amendment, that if it's not stated in the Constitution, then it's a state power. McCullough versus Maryland is very important. It's on page 75. It was about the second bank of the United States, and Maryland tried to tax the federal bank, and they were like, no, you can't do that. Enumerated and implied powers. The enumerated powers are specifically listed in Article 1 of the Constitution. Implied are all powers not listed. The elastic clause is necessary and proper clause. And just know the definitions, and you should be fine with those. Gibbons versus Ogden, I showed you the video about them. This defined the powers of trade between states, and I showed you the video about them on the waterways, and New York wanted specific or the whole trade, and it just wasn't going to work like that, and they ended up siding with the government. Government could regulate interstate trade, not intrastate, interstate. On the bottom of page 77, there are a few court cases, and it's talking about the powers of states and what powers they have. For example, in U.S. v. Lopez, it said that schools should be gun-free zones, and the ruling said that guns don't have anything to do with commerce, and that this should be left up to the states. And so at the bottom it says the federal government may either issue direction. Right at the bottom of 77, read the last couple of lines that are in parentheses. I'm sorry, quotation marks. On page 78 of chapter 3, you got full faith and credit clause. And it just says that each state recognizes the documents from another state, like your driver's license, your marriage certificates, and things like that. This was challenged in 1996 with the Defense of Marriage Act, when they passed, it's called DOMA, and they said that same-sex marriages which are recognized in some states don't have to be recognized in other states. This was ruled unconstitutional in 2013 and 2015 with Obergefell versus Hodges. It made same-sex marriage the rule of the land, or the law of the land. Extradition is when they have to bring criminals back from one state to another. Privileges, immunity clause. I have the same rights in Indiana as an Indiana citizen, or I have the same rights in Nevada as a Nevada citizen. Intergovernmental relations, that's where all the levels of government working together. I'm going to go ahead and stop this because it's going to get too long on me.